In the quiet corners of your mind, there is a lie that has been whispered to you since the moment you could understand language. A lie so pervasive, so deeply embedded in the soil of your consciousness that you have mistaken it for your own heartbeat. You were told that the world is a fair vending machine. You insert effort and you receive an equivalent value of survival and status. But if you look at the calloused hands of the laborer and the pristine, idle fingers of the billionaire, you realize that the math of the modern world does not add up. Hard work is not the engine of wealth. It is the fuel that others use to drive their own machines. We are taught to be the fuel, never the driver. And as you sit here, wondering why the grind has left you exhausted rather than enriched, you are beginning to sense a deeper, darker architecture behind the concept of currency. There is a reason you are trapped in a cycle of effort and exhaustion, and it has nothing to do with your productivity. It has everything to do with a psychological blueprint you were never meant to see. The ancient alchemists spent centuries trying to turn lead into gold, unaware that the true alchemy was already being performed on the human psyche. They realized that if you can control a man's perception of value, you can control his entire life. This is the first veil we must lift. Most people live in a state of hyper-productive blindness. They believe that by increasing their output, they increase their worth. But in the eyes of the global economy, your effort is a commodity, and commodities are always priced at the lowest possible point to ensure the system's survival. You are trading the only truly finite resource you possess, your time, for a medium of exchange that can be printed out of thin air by institutions that do not know your name. This is the ultimate psychological trap, the belief that linear effort leads to exponential wealth. If you stay with me until the final moments of this journey, I will reveal the cognitive breakpoint, the specific psychological shift that separates those who are owned by money from those who own the concept itself. But first, we must understand the sunk cost of the soul. We are conditioned from birth to equate suffering with merit. We feel a strange sense of nobility in our exhaustion. When we work ourselves to the bone, we feel we deserve success. This is a manipulation of the just world hypothesis, a cognitive bias that leads us to believe that noble actions eventually bring predictable rewards. The masters of the world love this bias. They encourage it. They want you to believe that if you aren't winning, you simply aren't working hard enough. It is the perfect defense mechanism for a rigged system. It turns the victim's frustration inward, making them blame their own lack of grit rather than questioning the structure of the game. Consider the invisible ceiling of the proletariat. It isn't made of glass, it's made of habit. When you sell your labor for a wage, you are participating in a system of delayed gratification exploitation. You are told to sacrifice your present for a future that is perpetually receding. The psychology of the grind is actually a form of Stockholm syndrome. You develop an emotional attachment to the very routine that keeps you stagnant. You celebrate the weekend because it is a brief reprieve from the cell, never realizing that the cell door is actually unlocked. You stay because the outside world, the world of true financial sovereignty, requires a type of thinking that your current labor has effectively paralyzed. True wealth is not a result of labor, it is a result of positioning. While the worker focuses on the how, the architect focuses on the where. Wealth flows to those who position themselves at the intersection of high leverage and low effort. This sounds heretical to the ears of the hard-working, but the universe does not reward sweat. It rewards the control of systems. Think of a dam. The workers who built the dam spent years in the sun, risking their lives. But the man who owns the lever that opens the gates, he is the one who controls the power. He does not sweat. He merely decides when the flow begins. Most people are busy carrying buckets of water from the river to the city, proud of how heavy their buckets are. They never stop to build a pipe. As we peel back these layers, you might feel a sense of discomfort. That is the feeling of your conditioning cracking. There is a final secret, a terminal logic that explains why the harder you work, the further the goalposts seem to move. But to understand that, we must first address the scarcity virus. From the moment you enter the school system, you are inoculated with the fear of not having enough. This fear creates a tunnel vision effect. When you are in survival mode, your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for long-term strategy and creative leaps, effectively shuts down. You become a creature of instinct, capable only of looking for the next meal, the next paycheck. The system doesn't need you to be smart, it needs you to be scared. A scared man is predictable. A predictable man is easy to harvest. The elite understand that money is not a thing you get, it is a game you play. Specifically, it is a game of asymmetric information. They know things about the nature of debt, inflation, and compounding interest that are intentionally omitted from public education. While the masses are taught to save, a psychological ritual that ensures their wealth is slowly eroded by the hidden tax of inflation, the elite are taught to deploy. They understand that money is like a shadow. If you chase it, it runs. If you walk towards the light, it follows you. This light is the creation of value that exists independently of your physical presence. If your income is tied to your heartbeat, you are not wealthy. You are just a well-paid hostage. Notice the hedonic treadmill that powers our society. You work hard to buy a symbol of success, a car, a house, a watch, only to find that the satisfaction evaporates within weeks. This is not a flaw in your character, it is a feature of the design. The dopamine debt you incur keeps you returning to the labor market, desperate for the next hit of acquisition. You are running a race where the finish line moves every time you take a step. The track is built on the effort-value paradox. The things that require the most physical effort often yield the least value, while the things that require the most psychological stillness yield the most wealth. We are approaching the cognitive breakpoint I mentioned earlier. But before we reach it, you must realize that your current identity is likely a construct designed to serve an economy that doesn't care if you live or die. Your work ethic is often just a polite term for compliance. We have been domesticated into believing that a day without exhaustion is a day wasted. But the highest form of human activity is not labor, it is thought. The person who can sit in a room alone and solve a problem that affects 1 million people will always be wealthier than the person who moves 1 million boxes. The world doesn't pay you for your time. It pays you for the scale of the problems you solve and the difficulty of replacing you. If you have stayed with me this far, you are ready for the ultimate truth. The ultimate truth is, money is not a reward for hard work. Money is a psychological tool used to outsource the labor of others. To have money is to have the power to command the time of other people. Therefore, to get money, you must stop being the person whose time is commanded. You must shift from the internalized worker to the systemic observer. The cognitive breakpoint happens the moment you realize that wealth is created by decoupling. You must decouple your income from your time, your worth from your effort, and your identity from your output. The elite do not work for money, they create gravity. They build structures, brands, assets, intellectual property, networks that pull resources towards them while they sleep. They have moved from the doing to the being. This is the life-altering realization that leaves most in silence. You have been trying to win a game of chess by being the best possible pawn, never realizing that the goal of the pawn is to reach the other side and become something else entirely. The pawn that works the hardest is still just a pawn. It is only when you stop moving one square at a time that the board begins to belong to you. As you stare at the screen, reflecting on the years you've given to the grind, you must ask yourself if you are ready to stop being the fuel. The door to the cell has always been open, but the walk to freedom is not through more effort, it is through a total psychological reconfiguration. You must unlearn the dignity of the struggle
and embrace the strategy of the void. You must become the architect of your own gravity. Because in the quiet corners of your mind, there is a lie that has been whispered to you since the moment you could understand language.